Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Gosh, I haven't done these in such a long time. Life has been happening in the background and I haven't had the time. I want to say I haven't had the time to read, but I haven't just been reading as much as I would love to. This book review that I'm going to do today, I have my phone on me because... Why do I have my phone on me? I want to... I have notes basically, and I want to make sure, oh gosh, the light is going to be going in and out all the time today. I don't even know. I'm going to try and set this a little bit different. So yeah, I want to make sure that I have all my notes prepared. And I was thinking about this video, like so many of the characters in this book are so interesting. And I don't know how much of them I want to talk about because I haven't got time. This is going to be like a 2-hour long video if I really want to go into as much detail that I want to go to. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of a gist about some of my favorite people, what I like about the book, and in some cases what I didn't like about the book, okay? Right, so the first thing that I want to talk about this book is the layout. So the book, actually I haven't even said the name of the book, but as you can see from the title of this video, the name of the book that I was reading is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. I've never heard of Bernadine Evaristo actually before I got this book, didn't know who she was. And that's no shade to who she is as a person because I really don't read that much. I can't remember where I actually got the book recommendation from, but they actually definitely did well with this because this is such a good book. So, in terms of the layout of the book and how the book is in general, initially when I got this book, I was told that it's a book about Black women in the LGBTQ plus community. But I think it's just a book about women in general, mostly Black women, but just in general women. So yeah, it's quite an interesting read. I like the way that the book is laid out for different reasons. So first things first, this is sort of like the contents page. As you can see there are different chapters. There's 5 chapters in this book, and each chapter is based on a set of women. I didn't quite feel like some of the women, I couldn't really find the connection between why they put some women together in the different classes. But then again, I read this book through the course of a year, and I'm really even struggling to remember some of the book, some of the parts of the book that I read. So maybe knowing now what I knew then, knowing then what I know now, maybe I would have been able to piece some of the connections together a little bit better. But because I didn't, then I just don't know what it is. So the book is about 12 women. Initially, when I was reading it, I kind of struggled to get into it. And I would definitely recommend if you're reading this book to start from chapter 2. The reason I say that is chapter 1, you're still struggling to understand the concept of that. It's 12 different women, right? And it's it gets very confusing. Even though chapter 1 is just based on 3 different women, I will show you as well. So you see chapter 1, there's Amma. And then you'd go again and it'd still be chapter 1, but Yaz, and then it'll carry on. So Amma is one of the name of the women in the book, obviously Yaz, etc., 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 and all the different names. There's 12 women in total. But like I was saying, it was difficult because there were so many names. The book follows the lives of these 12 women, these 12 different women. It doesn't really give you their full life story, but it takes a piece of them in some cases. In some cases, it gives you a full life story. In some of the cases, it just gives you a kind of a snapshot of their lives, which I thought was quite interesting, although it was a little bit confusing for me. The book ends with chapter 5, and chapter 5 is called The After Party. And I think chapter 5 is where I fully got to really appreciate that these women, they really are all connected, they're all related in one way or another. Some of the connection is a little bit more sort of direct. So for example, I believe Yaz is Amma's child and Dominique is Yaz's goddaughter and Amma's friend. So that's sort of obviously 3 women, makes sense. However, there's some that you probably really have to extrapolate how they're related. Shirley, I think Shirley maybe is one of the other godmothers of Yaz, Amma's daughter, and I think Shirley knows Amma. But then I didn't know this reading the book, so you have to sort of piece this together later. Shirley was also Carol's teacher, and Carol is one of the other people in the book. Penelope was Shirley's colleague in the school where they taught. And I just found it so interesting. And when I read the book, I definitely think of things a lot more deeply. I'm one of those people. I know, I'm sorry. But I always think about how people are living really complex lives, and just think of the people that you meet literally just every single day, and it's just a moment in time, just one single connection that you have with them. But maybe you could sort of fit into a bigger, wider story about who they are. So yeah, I just found that really interesting how it does seem a little bit random how these women are sort of pieced together and their stories are pieced together. But once you really appreciate the book for what it is, it's just like, oh my goodness, it's absolutely amazing. So some of my favorite stories in this book, like I said, it'd be really difficult to try and go into details of every single person. But one of my favorite stories in this book is one of Bumi. Bumi's a Nigerian immigrant in this story, and she comes from the perspective of like she had a very traumatic life and upbringing in Nigeria, like very, very traumatic, like seeing family member killed, like right in front of her eyes, or just some things that were just very, very traumatic going on. I believe she had a partner and she came with him to the UK and they immigrated to the UK, but I believe that he died here. Like I said, it's been a while. But there's two parts of Bumi's story that I kind of want to explore. The first one is how she is related to her daughter Carol, which is another woman as well that's talked about in the book. So Carol is like a typical first generation. I don't know if I can say typical, but she's a first generation immigrant. Obviously, Bumi being her mom. And Bumi really struggled. Actually, Bumi was a cleaner. They were, the typical, immigrant story in some way. It's kind of stereotypically immigrant story in the UK as someone who's coming here, struggled to really raise her kids. She did a lot of cleaning jobs. Raising her daughter in like a 1-bed council flat somewhere in London. But then she really rises up. And I recently watched a video of Patricia Bright's mom, Patricia Bright talking about her mom. And this story really like resonated, like it kind of reminded me of Patricia Bright's mom's story.
Growing up, my mum should take us to offices to clean the offices, and we'll go to school and she would say like, just don't tell anyone that you're working at 5 o'clock in the morning. You just go to school in the morning and act like everything was normal.
And also the way that Patricia Bright said that her mom sort of like rose up in the world was also very inspirational. It just sort of reminds me of that story. But then Bumi now has this daughter who is, doing really well. She ends up in like some of the best schools, and she's going to this uni that's really, really posh allegedly, and I'm thinking sort of like top 3 schools in the UK. It was definitely given Cambridge, Oxford and St Andrews, so definitely like really up there. And two things happen. Carol, who is Bumi's daughter, ends up with a guy, like a white British guy, ends up in terms of like relationship. And Bumi was not happy about that. She literally said, almost like word for word in the book, is like, how can she suffer and bring her child to this country to end up having her Nigerian bloodline diminished or like reduced because obviously her daughter was getting married to someone who wasn't Nigerian. So there was all of that side of things, and her mom sort of like, sort of having to come with terms of the fact that yes, your child is now living in the UK, so chances are they are going to end up in a relationship with somebody who is not Nigerian. So it is what it is. But also I think another bigger issue that's at play here is the person that Carol becomes. So I think this is a big issue just in general, because I see a lot of like first generation immigrants do this, where they come to the UK or their parents have brought them to the UK, and they just end up like really looking down on their parents and seeing them as less than. So they call their parents, fresh. I've literally heard people call their parents a freshie, like somebody who's not very up to date, who's not cool, who, I don't know, it's just someone who's very much uncool. I've also seen some people make fun of their parents' accents. There's a whole industry of like my African parents or my Nigerian parents or whatever it is. And, sort of highlighting that their views are, typical or typically different. And I think in a way, sometimes that's like making fun of it. So this book really talks about that, because Carol barely goes to see her mom anymore. And you can just tell there's a problem there with the way that she sees her mom now that she's become who she's become.
Since you got your degree and you know every fucking thing.
And I think that I'm really happy that Bernadine really talked about this in this book. Another thing that I wanted to talk about Bumi is a little bit more interesting, very juicy. So Bumi ends up creating like a cleaning company, and she had this woman that was working for her. I think her name was Omofe. Bumi, I think she grew up in like a place where they speak a lot of pidgin. I know they speak pidgin in Nigeria, but it was given more like Benin Delta type of place rather than anywhere else. But anyway, never mind. So Omofe was this woman whose husband took up a second wife in Port Harcourt. Nigerian men, yeah. But took up a second wife in Port Harcourt, and I think he was living she was doing long distance with him in Nigeria, and then he ended up marrying another woman in Nigeria. So they were both like, friends, like, oh, men are scum, all of that jazz. And then they started getting closer. So Omofe, who is her friend, who's also works for a cleaning company, sent her kids back to Nigeria. And then she was like, oh, you know, like I have an empty room in my house. Like you should definitely come. A woman shouldn't be alone by herself. You know, we get how difficult it is. And then them two started getting close, and then Omofe was like, I can't remember whose house. I think they were in Bumi's house. And Bumi was like, you know, you don't have to use the kids' spare bedroom. You can come and stay in my room. And next thing you know, situation turns to the doing things. So these two women, end up having like I think I would call it like a friends with benefit type of relationship. But honestly, I think because I just didn't expect it, and it just came so unexpectedly in the book. Like it wasn't something that was like dragged out. It was just like, oh, she has a cleaning company, or she has a colleague, or they're friends, they go to church together, all of that jazz. And next thing you know, they're sleeping together. I was like,
Full time.
whoa, I don't know. It was definitely like a very juicy read. But yeah, that's a lot about Bumi. Letitia also as well is another very interesting character. What broke my heart the most about Letitia's character was the situation that they had with the dad. So she and her family was what I would call like a perfect family. Everything was going great, and all of a sudden, like Letitia's dad just upped and left. Literally no words, letters, notes, nothing. He literally just woke up one day and decided, I'm out of here, done with this life. So yeah, that was definitely very interesting. What else as well? Like she ended up having like a very chaotic relationship with men. Her life was just a bit of a mess after that. She ended up having 3 kids by 3 different men. Obviously, choice and all that. Like if that's what you want to do with your life, fair enough. But she started having kids at 18, and you could tell that it wasn't because she was making a choice to have a kid. It was just because she just ended up in a lot of bad relationships and bad situations. And she didn't really understand. Because I think a lot of times, if we have to be honest, men and women as well can be very not two-faced, but what's the word to say, like, you know, can be a bit dishonest about what they want. Like a lot of times, like if someone just wants to sleep with you, they need to just say that. But she didn't, and a lot of women and a lot of us as well, as we're growing up in the world, you learn how to be able to read that, oh, this guy isn't interested in me, he just wants to, you know, to do the doing things. And you could see that took her some time to sort of learn that. But I think the one that broke my heart the most was a relationship she had with one of the guys. I think she found the guy on Facebook or online or something like that. And then they ended up meeting. And then he said that, oh, I want to cook your dinner at my place for first date. I was thinking, hello, if you don't run. But obviously, like I said, she was a little bit naive with men, and she went to his place first date. And the dinner, you know, ended up being her. And before she could say anything or even could really understand what was going on, like the guy was already like on her. And I think, trigger warning, pause, I think that's rape. Because like, yeah, it can go there's this gray area in general when people talk about rape, where it's like, okay, yeah, but you shouldn't have gone to the house. But I like that the book kind of really painted that picture of how it can literally look like, you know, and what's wrong is wrong. So yeah, that was quite interesting. She ended up getting her life together, and I was like, yes, girl. But yeah, it was, you know, kind of like a long way to get there. Another person's story that I found really interesting, I believe her name is Grace. I want to say Grace. Like, there's like a few women here who are related to each other. For example, Hattie, Grace, and Winsome, I believe. I think I'm still trying to figure out if Winsome is a man or a woman. Anyway, it was quite tricky for me to realize like how they're related. But basically, one of these women, they took us back in time. The lighting is going to be all over the place, but the sun is setting, so I need to keep increasing my ISO. But anyway, so there's this, basically you went back in time, somebody's grandmother, like I said. It's been a while since I read it, and it was difficult for me to make those connections with, oh, this is this person, great grandmom, this person, grandmom, etc., etc. Basically, she had quite an interesting sort of upbringing as well. Ended up in an orphanage. I believe that her mom didn't know where she was from, but she was allegedly Abyssinian. Abyssinia, I want to say it's like Ethiopia type of Africa area, but I could be totally wrong. I probably need to search this or look this up. But anyway, she was from that part of the world, and or that was what her mom told her. she ends up in an orphanage. She's, you know, a black girl in England in those times. Definitely couldn't have been easy. And anyway, she ends up, you know, getting married to this guy. He was ginger, white. It's relevant to the story, mentioning his race. But yeah, she ends up getting married to him, and he's like a farmer. He has like lots of land, and you could tell that he was just one of those men who just wanted, and I think this is a thing, who just wanted a woman. I think he had probably a little bit of a fetish for her. And it's like the things he would sort of say to her when they were sort of like doing things was a bit like, you know, questionable. It was something that, you know, with my 2020 or 2021 mind, I'm like, I'm raising eyebrows. But yeah, anyway. So she ends up getting pregnant for her husband. A little juicy story about the maid that they had in the house. You need to read it. But anyway, she ended up getting pregnant for her husband, as usual. And she miscarried the baby. No, the baby was stillborn. I was like, wow, that's rough. Second baby, I believe she miscarried. Like, she wasn't able to carry the baby to full term. I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit deep. And then the third child that she had, literally as I was reading the book, I was like, Lord Jesus, fix it. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm really hoping that she doesn't lose the second child. Like, I hope everything is okay. Like, oh God, please no, like, let this not be another miscarriage. And it wasn't. So she had a baby. The baby, you know, was fine. And then 6 months went, 7, 8, 9 months, 10, I think about a year, the baby died. The book has this weird thing where in some parts of the book, like, it really expands on, oh, this person went to this place and this person thinks this and this person wears this. And in some other parts of the book, I think a lot of authors do this. It's just like literally so quick. I was like, what happened? Was the baby sick? Like, obviously the baby was sick. Well, what was the sickness? How did they? No, it's just the baby died. And she was literally utterly shattered. She was completely heartbroken. And that broke my heart as well, seeing that. And then her husband was like, okay, I'm sad as well. But sis, we need to have a baby. I need to have an heir to leave all of my farmland to. Like, sort it out. Again, trigger warning. I think that the way that he went about it and just literally just having sex with her, you could tell that she wasn't interested in that, but he was just carrying on. But anyway, never mind. We're not even going to go there. But she ends up getting pregnant after like a few times of trying. And the baby that she had was a perfectly fine little girl, but she was so heartbroken that she didn't even name the child. The baby, 1, 2, 3 years, she did not name the child. It was there's a little girl just walking around here. And I think, you know, it was interesting, and I think, again, good. And that's one of the things that I love about this book so much, is just how it just shows a lot of real life stuff that people sort of live with and deal with. I think what the baby's mom was going through is just, you know, the side effects of grief. In the process where she was trying to get pregnant and have that baby girl who ended up being fine, she was so depressed. Like, she was someone who was so interested in cleaning her house and making sure everything's perfect. And she just didn't care. She didn't comb her hair. She didn't shower. She didn't do nothing. She just was just there, just clinically what we would call right now, like in present day and time, depressed. And she still carried on even after having her baby. Like, she couldn't even look at the child when she gave birth. And yeah, it was just very interesting. And I really loved that the author actually talked about that in the book. And one day, I think when the baby was around 7, she just realized, you know, when something just switches in your mind, she realized that, oh my goodness, like, this is my child. She's still here, and I'm just gonna just love her because, you know, she's here and she's not dying. Yeah, but anyway, that was really good, and I absolutely love that part of the book. Another thing that was very interesting as well is that I believe that her child, Hattie, who's the person who, you know, the baby at 7 who ended up being alive, ended up going to either her child or her child's child, so her grandchild, but one of those two. But the purpose of the story is that she then ended up having a baby when she was about, I want to say it's a grandchild. I really want to say it's a grandchild. I think Winsome would have been the Hattie's child, and then the grandchild. But anyway, had a baby when she was about 14 years old. Again, with I want to say it's either a schoolboy or a church boy. He was also white. Again, very important to the story. But yeah, when she was 14, you know, her parents were like, rah, you're going to have a baby in this house at 14, sis? But yeah, she had the baby, and literally after she had the baby, like not very shortly after, her dad literally was done. He's just like, okay, I've decided that I don't want to have a baby in this house. I'm going to take this baby away from you, and you're not going to do anything about it. Period. Her dad literally took the child. She only kept like a keepsake, so like a sock or like a cloth or something, hid it in a box, and never told any of her children about it. Never told anybody else. She went on obviously to have more children and get married and all of that jazz. Never told nobody, not a single soul. And I like that the author talked about that, because like people have things in real life that they just haven't told anybody about. Sometimes they're not necessarily secrets that, you know, they're hiding and like not wanting to tell anybody about. But sometimes it's just something like this lady in this book did that you just lock away and just lock away in your mind mentally, and you just never talk about it. So in the book as well, there's this other woman, Penelope. She's white, you know, living her best life. She's Shirley's colleague, like I talked about. Shirley is Carol's teacher, was Carol's teacher, the bougie, you know, first generation immigrant child. Yeah, she was a teacher in school. Yeah, the whole story about her wasn't too interesting, but I thought it was quite interesting how they related it to Carol. And anyway, that's a different story. But Penelope, this white lady, was Shirley's a black woman as well. She was Shirley's colleague in school. Not colleague, yeah, in school, because they were teachers. Read about her story. I think her story is interesting, and her journey through men and marriages, and it was very interesting and just very, very real as well. It was a little bit racist. She was quite racist, and I love the way that the book kind of writes about it in a very just looking at things from her mindset. And so you're reading it from lady's mindset, and obviously the lady doesn't name it. There isn't even a mention of the word racist, but obviously a lot of people who are racist, they don't know that they are. So I thought it was quite interesting that, you know, she wrote about Penelope and Penelope's thoughts and mindset from that perspective. Just a very non-judgmental, this is just what I'm thinking sort of perspective. And it's always good to read things like that sometimes. But anyway, Penelope was adopted. But they get to a point where Penelope's much older. She's been divorced, I want to say twice, and married again. She's in her 60s, 70s, and she thought to herself, like, for some reason, she was getting feelings of, like, you know, her birth parents, and, like, just really wanting to close that chapter in her life. And then her daughter was like, oh, you should do this, you know, ancestry DNA type of thing, you know, where they tell you what your genetic makeup is. And after a lot of convincing, she finally decided to do it. And when she did it, she realized that, you know, because she, in her mind, Penelope thought that, you know, she was kind of excited and looking forward to her ancestry being like Vikings, and I'm from this royal Caucasian bloodline or whatever. So, you know, needless to say, she was very, very surprised when she opened the ancestrydna.com and discovered, to her greatest shock and surprise, that she actually had some black in her. A few Nigerian, you know, we out there. She had a few different bits and bobs, as you normally do, scattered everywhere. And that really, really threw her off. I think the reason was, like, if you go back to the person who was Abyssinian, actually, her mum didn't even know where her dad was from. Her mum slept with some sailor, I believe, who was, I think, told her he was Abyssinian, but I think he was also mixed with lots of other things, which, you know, in 2021, a lot of people are. So Penelope, the white lady, was very, very, not very happy about the fact that she had African in her. She wasn't happy about the fact that she had Irish in her. She was like, what? My ancestors were potato farmers? Excuse me? I just thought it was very, very interesting. But luckily for her, her mum and I believe her sister, one of those two, her mum and somebody else, because her mum is a lot older right now, had signed up, you know, to do this ancestry journey online. Like, okay, username, message the person, I'm your daughter, it looks like, blah, blah, blah. They then decided to schedule to meet up and everything. I still get shivers whenever I talk about it, because it's just like, it's this woman who is definitely very privileged in some ways, you know, very, very interesting perspective on race and, you know, where people are from. And she sees her mom, and literally all she could just be is like, wow, like, this is my mother, and like everything and nothing else matters. So yeah, it was just very interesting. And, you know, they say love wins. Sometimes it doesn't, but it was very nice to just see that. It was how the book ended, and honestly, my heart just melted. I held onto the book and just thought to myself, Lord. So yeah, I definitely just thought to myself, yeah, it was honestly really, really great. It was one of my favorite things about the book. And it was a bit of a plot twist as well, because I never expected that. I never expected that connection, and then making a connection to others. I was just like, mind blown. There was also some other stories about Amma and Dominique. They were friends. They're both lesbians. Yaz is Amma's daughter. And the relationship between Amma and her baby daddy, who is also gay, was quite unique, quite interesting, very real as well. How they both just made a consensual decision to have a baby, to love, and to have a child, and all of that stuff. And it was just very interesting. Amma was kind of single for the rest of her life. Her best friend, Dominique, who's a bit Lala, both of them are artists. They were running like a show, a theatre show in London. I should say as well, I think I've mentioned it, but if I haven't, it's a story based on Black British women. It's specifically for England. But this woman, Dominique, who is lesbian, like I said, ends up in a relationship, in an abusive relationship. And I bet you, something in my mind had never really made the connection that women in relationships would be abusive to each other, like physically. I know that women can really mess you up mentally, but I just never thought, I don't know, it's probably like a positive stereotype, but it's still a stereotype where I just thought, it's all love and everything is all, rainbows and unicorns. And, if two women are together, there's no form of physical abuse that would likely happen, because women are great. Yeah, so that was a joke, and it was just very real, because women being abused by women or by men is as valid as abuse is valid. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting that Bernadine, the author, wrote about that in this book. Just so many real stories. They wrote about, again, I'm trying to think of the word, a woman who ended up realizing that she wants to identify as non-binary. Her story of getting to that point was very interesting as well. And obviously, I'm quite curious actually about how people who are part of I just kind of whistled there, about people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, how they feel about somebody. I don't think Bernadine identifies as someone who is part of that community. I don't think so. Again, I don't really know her very well, and I probably should have done my research, but I don't think she is. And if she isn't, I wonder how people who are, I wonder how they feel about somebody else outside of the community writing about them feels. You know what I mean? She wrote about them. There's nothing negative here. I just wonder how they feel about that. Whether that's an issue. I don't think so, because like I said, it's nothing. They're not stereotypically negative storylines. But then again, how would I know that? Because I'm looking and coming from a different perspective. Anyway, it was such an interesting read, because yeah, it's just a real book. There's so many things, where it's just a line, it's just a page, it's a short story out of someone's major story, where I'm just like, rah, it's rough out here, Bernadine Evaristo did such a good job. I definitely recommend reading this book. And yeah, thank you so much for coming to my YouTube space, for watching this video, and I will see you somewhere in the space sometime soon. Bye-bye.